All right, everyone. In the Netherlands, it's normal to get your coffee from a tea bag. It's actually interesting. I'm semi-joking here. The variety of different coffee delivery methods are definitely more variable. We got to talk about now Donald Trump announcing the other day he's leaving New York. He's born and raised New Yorker. New York City is basically the Trump city. But he's saying fuck it. At this point, he can't deal with it anymore. Between the taxes and the nonstop witch hunts after him politically, he's going to Florida. Now, Cuomo comes out and says, well, good riddance. Thank goodness you're leaving. Very, very funny. Andrew, Cuomo is not a very popular individual, may not get reelected in a state as blue as New York. It's interesting for him to do that. So someone who pays enormous amounts of taxes into your state, and who, after all, has been a private citizen in your state, I believe, their entire life, you're telling them good riddance, go away. That's going to sit well with the people of New York, considering the fact that you've taxed so many of the wealthier individuals out of the state that you've had to weaponize the state's own auditing function in order to recover money from people by auditing them for the last 10 years just in order to try to recoup, because you're losing literally billions of dollars a year. And this is the sort of policies that the far left gets you. People like Cuomo who do not know how to manage a budget, in turn, will look down their noses at the little people when they have a bit of debt. Have you ever noticed that, by the way? It's interesting. Politicians and rich people alike sometimes have the tendency to do this. They'll look down upon people who fundamentally have the same structural economic problem that they have on a much bigger level. There are a lot of rich people that will take out loans and on paper technically are in debt at times in order to invest. And Trump, by the way, being one of them. He would take out enormous amounts of money basically against his brand. He would build 5 or 6 skyscrapers. He would rent them out. He would draw in people. And then that yearly income would pay off the interest in them some. And therefore, he was able to invest the next round. And it kept growing and growing and growing. That's why he has an empire. That's why he is a multi-billionaire. That's what separates the Millionaires Club from the Billionaires Club, is that savvy in investing, really, in his case. Here's the thing, though. Governments do the same. On a massive, massive scale that's even 10,000 times larger. They're constantly in debt. Hell, sometimes the amount of debt that they hold negates their very value on anything but a sheet of paper somewhere in a fucking computer bank. The United States has crippling levels of debt. If a household had the debt load that some nations around the world had, we'd call it completely dysfunctional and probably say, well, there's fraud going on. They're borrowing against their own, they're doing something in order to amalgamate more debt than they can possibly ever conceivably pay off. There's no way for that to happen. Why are we still lending to them? It's interesting how wealth is primarily concocted out of thin air and represents no actual productive capacity in some cases. But I'm not surprised. When the state of New York has for the last year explicitly said, we're going to headhunt after the president. We're going after him double-barreled, full-throttled. We're going to look at his taxes. We're going to look through every record we've got on him. We're going to weaponize every state agency to look into him. At what point can you say that you can't possibly blame Trump, even if you think he's guilty? Even if you think Trump is a shit, let's say you're a never-Trumper, you've got to admit, though, when you and your family are being heinously and consistently harassed by the government's function in your own locality, at some point, if you're able, you say bye-bye. Florida's not weaponized against him. Florida loves Donald Trump. Mar-a-Lago is, palatial, like better than the White House. Why wouldn't he want to live there? By the way, he spends a lot of time away from the White House anyway. He probably considers the U.S. Capitol to be quaint. Oh, what quaint little surroundings, he says as he walks into the Oval Office. Oh, yeah, this looks like my summer chateau. It's very funny because Trump's one of the few people to ever experience that kind of lifestyle. If I were Trump, absolutely I would leave. I would have left New York a long time ago. I wouldn't have had any properties. I would have said, look, I would have run against the government of New York years ago. If I had been Trump, I would have seized the mayoral position there. I'd have said, hey, I can reform New York City. Rudy did a good job. Now it's my turn, and I would have run. Donald Trump would have swept aside any competition. Running as a Dem or Republican third party, he could have done an independent run because he could have buried anyone in cash. Said, look, I've got 15 fucking skyscrapers around this building. I own half of this chunk of the skyline. What are you going to do about it? At that point, Cuomo and other people wouldn't be able to fundraise nearly enough to stop him. I think that the reason why they treated him so nicely with kid gloves, other than the tax sense, for so long is specifically they were afraid he'd get into politics. Then he says, hey, approaching 70, I'm going to run for the presidency, just for the hell of it. I think that Donald Trump desperately did want political power, but he always held off because he just wanted to focus on business and things like that. And as long as people were treating him well, he said, well, everything's fine. Then he saw the way the economy was going. I think he thought it endangered his private business enterprise, and he thought the whole globe was going to collapse into depression, and he didn't want to be a casualty. He didn't want to end up like one of those late 1800s barons whose families ended up completely destitute in the wake of the Great Depression and the stock market crash. I think Trump genuinely worried about stuff like that. I think he decided to take matters into his own hands. So congrats to him. You're leaving a cold, extremely high tax state for one that's extremely warm and, well, let's face it, relatively low cost of living. Not that Trump has to worry about that, but if Trump can get his Big Mac for 50 cents less, he sees that as a good business opportunity. He sees that as saving thousands of dollars over the subsequent year. Again, it's interesting. His lifestyle it will be studied for 100 years to come, trust me. Yeah, definitely, he's already carved his name into the annals of history. It doesn't even matter if his presidency crashes and burns at this point. By the way, he's already won. He's got the Triple Crown. There's nothing anyone can do about that. In fact, arguably, to go into an ignominious downfall like a fucking Nero sort of thing and get thrown in jail for treason or something would probably be the ultimate capstone, turn him into, the much, much richer version of Al Capone, I guess. Like if Al Capone ever was the president. Man, what a life. It's very, very interesting. Maybe he ends up with a fourth marriage and that sinks his presidency or something. Now, I know what Trump can do. If he wants to really get into it, he can declare himself transgendered at this point. He can probably do that. What are you going to do about it? And he says, oh yeah, I was hanging out with Jenner and I realized, shit, I'm just like that. I'm just like her. And I want to get a sex change too, says Donald. It'd be funny. Or he could just take photos of his supposedly mushroom-headed penis and put them on the internet. Be the first president to do something like that. And he'll do it on purpose too, and then he'll brag about it. That's about all. Peace out.